Welcome back. We are here after nearly 3 weeks off. How have you all been coping? Thank you very much for joining us once again. Welcome to our big match build-up show, and finally some Saints to talk about. Southampton head along the south coast to the Amex Stadium this weekend to play Brighton and Hove Albion. So a lot to discuss then on this week's show. Just think how different the mood might have been had we not beaten Tottenham Hotspur all those weeks ago. Do find out what we've made of Saints' international performances this weekend, and we discuss the importance of this game. How will it have a lasting effect on the outcome of the season? Is this a must not lose? We also ask Brighton fans how they feel ahead of the weekend and whether they could well be distracted by their FA Cup semi-final.
It's a massive game for them. They know that if they win it, they'd be 6 points clear of us, and that'd be quite a lot to claw back at this stage of the season. This is a crunch battle with your very top players coming out, and don't take the FA Cup into equation. That will be out of their minds. Let's face it, they're going to play Man City at Wembley. Good luck with that. You know, this is their cup final right now, and it's our cup final.
It's not. It might be a must-win for you, and that's fair enough. Or is a must-not-lose. I think for us, it's a must-not-lose, because what it will do is it'll deny Southampton the points that they'd need. Fine. But I think that seeing as we have so few opportunities to pick up points away from home, that this is one of those that we'd have to target. And I think that Chris will go into this, not all guns blazing, he doesn't do that, but I think with a mentality to, this is a winnable game.
As usual now then, the episode is available to download if you press on the card above my head, if you're watching on YouTube, or available on most audio platforms in the links below the show. Do stay tuned later on for your bite-size away guide and your travel advice. And you can grab yourself a 10% discount on one of these Singing Saints scarves, courtesy of the 12th man. All you have to do is type in the ugly inside, all one word, in the discount code in your checkout. So less of that, then more of this. Time to kick off our big match build-up show. Brighton and Hove Albion versus Southampton. Welcome along then to our first half of our Brighton big match build-up show. A familiar face. It feels like it's been ages since we spoke about the match review, just to keep things ticking over the Tottenham game. But Clive, good to see you. How have you been coping, mate? No competitive football in nearly 3 weeks.
I've been working, Freddie, working like a dog. Saving up for Europe next season.
We live in hope. But there's no reason why we can't. I suppose
I'm in another world there.
I suppose we can also, use this chance just to reflect really briefly on the Tottenham result. Still a sensational victory, though. Still basking in the feeling, if you like, and it would have been a totally different mood had we gone into this 3-week break without a win. Yeah,
it gives us a lot of encouragement for the rest of the season, doesn't it? And as well, the guys have gone off on their international breaks, buoyant, with a spring in their step, and the training camp. Obviously, there'll be a lot of belief there that we can do it as a club, the whole club. As I said in the last thing, I think it gives the youth of the club a big impetus to a big sense of, that this club will give you a chance if you're good enough. And you will get a chance at the top level.
This week we've also seen a handful of internationals, including James Ward-Prowse. We're joking just before we come over there. We're recording at a time as England are playing. Has James Ward-Prowse played yet? No, he hasn't. But ultimately, he was called up after 3 withdrawals. It's almost, for me, it feels like it's an insult that he's not good enough for the first call-up.
Yeah, I think you're right. Given that the other guys have hardly played, I think that's a fair comment, Freddie. And James has played so well lately. Has it served its purpose if he doesn't even come on tonight? Well, he's been away, he's been training. He's part of the setup for the future. And if he keeps banging them in like he has been and keeps playing like he has been, it's going to be hard to leave him out.
Yeah, it'd be hard for Gareth Southgate to ignore, I suppose, his former England under-21 captain. But we've also seen a handful of others being away this week. Bednarek, actually, who's come down with flu. There's been a virus outbreak in the Polish national team, so he hasn't played, actually. Elianusi played against Spain for Norway the other day, and Højbjerg scored in the game against Kosovo, and Stuart Armstrong also been in action. What have you made of their weeks? Have you seen much of their action?
I haven't seen much of their action, no. I mean, the overriding thing is from our point of view going into this Brighton game, that the players get back as soon as possible and that Ralph gets 2 or 3 days with them to drum into him what he wants for the Brighton game and what his plan is. I'm sure they all know what the plan is already, but it's just important to get together and have that feeling back that we had at the end of the Tottenham game, to get that sense of enthusiasm and belief back together again, because it's important to get that mood back into the camp, I think.
Yeah.
And get that enthusiasm as well as for the fans, because it has been a long break, 3 weeks. It's the scheduling just seems all to cock in the Premier League. It's like, they play at the most inopportune times for us to go and watch them. All right, thankfully, this one's Saturday, 3:00, great. But a lot of the games are rescheduled and onto different days. So, and it all seems a bit crammed at times, and then you get a 3-week break. From the players' point of view and from managers' point of view, that is a nightmare.
And I guess if we reflect back on the breaks that we have had, like you say, we haven't been able to capitalise on, I suppose, the momentum before the break. So, the boys have been at home this week, the players that haven't been international duty. Originally, we were meant to play a friendly at home to Bristol City, but eventually it was a 3-2 win against QPR in midweek with Charlie Austin Gallagher, and Jake Voken's also getting a chance in the team and on the score sheet.
Yeah, well, there's another name that might come good in the future. He's represented his country, hasn't he? So I think Jake's progress has been very encouraging, and I think the whole of the youth setup has had a massive boost since Ralph's come into the club and shown that he's willing to, if you're good enough, doesn't matter how old you are, you're in the setup. Whether you're in the team or not, obviously takes time, but. It's a massive boost for these guys, and having a lot of youngsters there, I think the fans are on side. They will always respond to having good young players coming through. We've done it right through our history since I've been supporting Saints, and it looks like we're doing it again now.
Yeah, and I guess notably, we also saw, obviously, Danny Ings missed the Tottenham game a few weeks ago. We obviously thought that perhaps his target was Tottenham, but clearly wasn't fit. But now he's been rested to aim for Brighton, managed to 45 minutes against QPR in the midweek. What are the chances do you think he'll be straight back into the squad on Saturday at the Amex?
I think it's quite a good chance if he's fit, just on the basis of you can't buy it. He's got that experience at top game level, and he's one of these guys that joins, in terms of his football ability, he joins the play up so well. So I think he could well be back. And, Josh Sims, obviously there's that argument. He did so well against Tottenham coming on, a man of the match appearance in 45 minutes. And you think, he's got to be in. But last season he had a similar thing where he did very, very well away to Burnley. And then he started a game and he didn't have such an effect. So sometimes that's the manager's call, and that's where this guy earns his money. He's doing a lot of things right for us, and this is where he earns his money, really, whether to make that big decision. But my gut would say that Danny Ings would get the nod if he's fit.
Because before the break, we actually saw the two games before the break. We saw 2 unchanged teams. I mean, obviously, if all the players come back fit and fresh and raring to go, it could be a possibility that once again we'll see an unchanged team for the third game in a row. It
could be, Freddie, but I just think Danny Ings is so crucial to our forward chances that he would be back in the fold. We shall see.
Well, Brighton have also got I suppose, a similar episode like we had last season, an FA Cup semi-final to play after this game at the weekend. It's their first semi-final in the FA Cup in over 30 years. It almost hindered our campaign. Do you think they'll have one eye on the cup?
No, I don't. Sorry to shatter that illusion, but no, this is a massive game for them. They know that if they win it, they'd be 6 points clear of us, and that'd be quite a lot to claw back at this stage of the season. Lose it, we're right in there with them. They've got a slightly better goal difference. I think we'd have to win 3-0 to overhaul them. So in a game as tight as this, I think that scoreline might be unlikely, but you know that it's a massive pressure for both these teams. And it's one of those ones, as fans, you go there with a sort of knot in your stomach, just hoping for the best and hoping your team's going to respond and pick up where we left off against Tottenham.
So would you say this is a must-not-lose game rather than a must-win?
Obviously, if we don't lose, we've still got the 3 points behind them, so they're still very much intact. So, yeah, you could say that from that point of view. I think I've seen a bit of Brighton. I went down there to watch them in the cup match when they played West Brom, and they were absolutely awful that day against West Brom's youth team, to be honest. Obviously, we saw them in the League Cup. They're strange Brighton. Sometimes you watch their football and you think, how they got all these points on the board? But I think they're a very canny team. I think you've got to give credit to the manager with the players that he's got. He's done tremendously well. And their philosophy is that they improve season on season. And I think they've done that, to be absolutely fair to them. So they're a tough nut to crack, especially on their own patch. Don't play the prettiest football, but they're effective, and they're very effective from set pieces. One thing that I'm very worried about, obviously, Tottenham got a lot of joy, a lot of free room in the box from free kicks and movement. So I'm quite worried we need to be a lot tighter, especially on Murray. This is a crunch battle with your very top players coming out, and don't take the FA Cup into equation. That will be out of their minds. They're let's face it, they're going to play Man City at Wembley. Well, good luck with that. You know, this is their cup final right now, and it's our cup final. And I just hope we go into it in a positive frame of mind. I'm sure we will. But be wary of, you know, maybe our fragilities are from set pieces, and their strength is from set pieces. That's what worries me. But football-wise, I think we can have a lot of joy. I think we can play some really, really good stuff going forward, and hopefully, it's quite a big pitch. You know, I think you're not going to have a game where it's just what we call a midfield battle. I think it's going to get quite stretched at times.
Okay, well, great stuff though. Clive, good to speak to you as always. Any top tips on away pubs? There's a plethora of good cracking pubs down in Brighton, isn't there?
Well, if I said that, you'd all be in there and I'd never get a beer. But there are a few around the station. Some of them are Brighton pubs. All I would say is that getting to and from the game on the train is an absolute ball ache. In that I mean, you can get beer at the ground, so that's one thing. There are caravans outside the ground selling it, and I don't mean the caravans you get in Portsmouth. I mean the ones that, you know, that you get served burgers from and things. Yeah. But you can also get beer in the ground, and they do. One thing, they do keep the bar open for a short while after the game, so you can have a pint if you don't want that mad crush at the station. And it is a crush, and it is it looks like the weather's going to be okay, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. But yeah, have a beer after the game, have a couple. Let's hope we're celebrating a win, and onwards and upwards, mate.
Absolutely, and onwards to Liverpool the Friday after as well. So I know you don't like predictions, but we just hope for a good performance, don't we, mate?
We do. I am actually going to say that we're going to win this one, and we're going to go out in a very positive frame of mind. Hopefully, it's all about, if you do get ahead in the game, sticking with it, you know, and digging in, because they will come strong and when they're battering us, you know, if we do get ahead, that's the point. That's the time to stay strong in the game.
Great stuff, mate. And I'll see you at the weekend.
All right, ready up the Saints.
Great to speak to Clive as always. And if you see us in the pub before or after the match, do give us a shout. Anyway, on to your bite-size away guide. And if you're heading in on the train, firstly, you've got to negotiate the engineering works on southwestern railway lines between Winchester and Southampton Central before you even get to Brighton. And there will be bus replacements all day Saturday, so do check your journey if you're coming from any of those stations in between Winchester and Central. But once you do get to Central, it is pretty much plain sailing on the Southern Line direct to Brighton, and you do not need a direct ticket to Falmer, which serves the Amex Stadium, because your match ticket is inclusive of train travel to and from the ground. But one thing to know, the later you do leave it on match day, getting to the ground from the outer stations, there is likely to be long queues for the shuttle services. But once you do arrive in Brighton, as mentioned a little earlier on, there is a plethora of great little pubs, but do be aware the pubs directly by the station, the mainline train station, will only admit home fans only before the match, at least before the match anyway. So I'd say take a little wander down the town towards the lanes, or towards some of these side streets where some cracking pubs. And if you are driving down to Brighton, the club do try to encourage fans to make use of the park and ride services available at Mill Road, Brighton Racecourse and Mithras House, the Brighton University campus. And like Clive suggested, once the game is over, then it's probably best to just take your time, have a little pint at the ground whilst the train station queues do die down a little. Anyway, there you have it. Plenty to consider on Saturday. Time now to speak to our opposition, the Albion Roar, and we find out how the Seagulls are feeling ahead of the weekend. Will they be distracted by the FA Cup? What is their priority? So welcome along then to this second half of this big match build-up show. Saints head to the Amex Stadium this weekend, and who better to ask than Alan from the Brighton Hove podcast and the radio show, the Albion Roar. Good to see you again. How are you, mate?
I'm fine, man. I'm fine. Just had a 50th birthday party last night. Feeling a bit fragile, but nothing like as fragile as after the FA Cup game that we had last weekend.
Well, I suppose we will get to the FA Cup as well a bit later on, but we'll talk about sort of domestic matters, more to home really. I mean, this weekend, the match, both of us sitting on the same points at 30 points, and before Huddersfield at the beginning of the month, and the victory against Leicester, you hadn't won in all of 2019, and then you follow it up with a Crystal Palace win the following week. I mean, how did that feel really?
Oh, beating Crystal Palace is always good. I mean, it's like it might as well start raining chocolate. You couldn't be happier. It's wonderful. And to do it at their place, we did the double over them for the first time in 35 years. We actually looked it up. They haven't done the double over us since 1933. These are the important things you have to consider. It's like you guys when you think about what it's like when you're playing Portsmouth, and all these little things you're going to pick up on, and all the tiny little fragments to actually make you feel better with one team or another. So beating Palace, always good. But in the greater scheme of things, never mind the rivalry, it's points we desperately needed. We were expecting, I'd have bitten your hand off for a draw ahead of that game, but to come away with a win, especially with Knockhart's goal, the one he scored, is brilliant.
And it's really brought Crystal Palace back into the mixer as well. Obviously Brighton with a couple of games in hand on Palace, and a game in hand on us, and 2 games in hand over, Burnley that sit below us.
It's all getting a bit sort of interesting and messy down the bottom there. I think it's probably fair to say that Huddersfield and Fulham are probably as good as gone. They're not in a good position at all. So it's a scramble for the last 3, and Cardiff might be in the the favourites to go down at this particular moment in time. We still have to play them, but I think probably our best opportunity is the fact that we have those teams around us to play at home, and we've got a pretty decent home record. We are abominable away from home, and we have to play the likes of Chelsea and Arsenal and everyone else. I think you don't want to have to play away, and we're not expecting to pick up any more points. But at home, this is our main hope. And like I said, we're pretty reasonable. But for everyone else to be in the mix, it's going to be interesting, although you don't really want to be in it. But hey, that's football. This is what we signed up for.
Of course, obviously big games big teams to play in the run-in. Like you say, you've got Spurs, Arsenal, Man City in the final few games. I mean, how significant is it to get those points on the board right now before we get into the run-in?
Absolutely. I mean, we had a decent first half of the season to put ourselves kind of mid-table, and the disastrous January and February that we've had has kind of dragged us back into it. So you've got to get to realise that you just basically keep the scoreboard ticking over. A win, a home, a draw away, and you'd be more than okay. You'd be doing pretty well, actually. But this, also football doesn't work that way. So yeah, keeping the scoreboard ticking over. And like I say, I mean, this is where, with all due respect to yourselves, we're definitely targeting away at home. We have Cardiff to play at home. We have Newcastle to play at home. And if we don't pick things up from there, then, we deserve to be in the mess that we'd find ourselves in.
I'm interested to find out how you think Chris Hughton will approach this game. Of course, us as Saints fans, this is a game we must not lose. And the last 3 games in the league have all been draws. How do you think Chris Hughton will be approaching this game?
I think he'd be relatively confident of a win. I mean, Southampton's record isn't brilliant at the moment. We are pretty decent at home. To be honest, I think that the international break has done us no end of favours, actually. I mean, everyone's still buzzing from last weekend, and I think find it hard for everyone, well, certainly the supporters and maybe the players to a certain extent, to concentrate. And for us, I think it might be a must win for you, and that's fair enough, or as a must not lose. I think for us, it's a must not lose, because what it will do is it'll deny, Southampton the points that they'd need. Fine. But I think that seeing as we have so few opportunities to pick up points away from home, that this is one of those that we'd have to target. And I think that Chris will go into this, not all guns blazing, he doesn't do that, but I think with a mentality to, this is a winnable game. And
it really tested your resolve and your mental strength a couple of weeks ago in the, I suppose you could say, a classic cup tie against Millwall. 2-0 down, you look dead and buried, and then suddenly a last-minute sort of equaliser from Solly Marcher, albeit from a goalkeeping error.
Yeah, well, Southampton of all teams know what it's like to be 2 up in the FA Cup. Quite. Sorry to rub that in, but we were dreadful that day. We were absolutely dreadful. But it's the stuff that, even when you get to the Premier League, you realise there's a certain level of magic to it. Yeah, we got a pretty decent goal in 88 minutes, and then we even called it when Solly March put that free kick in. He said no, he's going to overhit it and he's just going to stick it down the keeper's throat. He did exactly that. Thankfully, the keeper obliged us. Total fluke. I think after that, you saw that we were the fitter team. Millwall were flagging, and we had a goal ruled out wrongly for offside. That would have settled it. But penalties are exciting. I'm sure for the neutral, people are sort of scratching their heads saying, "What happened there?" For us, we're actually our wheels are absolutely spinning. So and this is our first Wembley appearance, apart from the Spurs game, but. This is our first Wembley appearance for a long time. These occasions are few and far between for us. So, yeah, we're milking it in. We're playing Manchester City at Wembley, but, we're just taking it in. But so long as everyone doesn't lose sight of the fact that we still have, Southampton and Chelsea before we play Manchester City.
Yeah, and that's literally my next point. After the weekend, it is your FA Cup semi-final. I think it was over 30-odd years since your last appearance at an FA Cup appearance at Wembley, But, we had the same last season. We had a semi-final to play against Chelsea, and you could say we were somewhat distracted by a FA Cup run. How do you think Brighton fans are feeling about it? Will you be prioritising one over another? And, of course, Chelsea to play on Wednesday between the weekend.
I think they'll be prioritising the Saturday game because that's a better chance to get the points. The Chelsea game is a little bit more of a free hit. So certainly will be, I don't suppose for a second. It depends on how the Brighton-Southampton game goes. That if we do get the win, I suspect that Chris Hughton might actually rest some of the players that he intends to play for the semi-final against Chelsea. It might mean a little bit of a pasting, but it's the choices he's got to make because I think the Premier League is the priority. If we get the win against Southampton, we've given ourselves a little bit more breathing space. If we don't get it, then we still have to concentrate, is my take on it. But then this is Chris Hughton, for every fan that will tell you about how they think it should go and they'll have their own armchair managerial style. Chris Hughton, by and large, knows what he's on about. So, yeah, it's we can all sort of second guess what he's going to try and do. We just have to go with what he's going to do.
Well, you've also seen recently a bit of a fossil fuel sort of getting back on the score sheet once again, but he's been in and out of the side recently. Glenn Murray, 11 goals this season, one more goal he'll equal last season's tally, but how does he keep doing it? 35 years old.
Because he doesn't run around much. I've seen yogurt turn quicker than him. No, he's a kind of a bit of a bully. He's a 6-yard sniffer. He has no pace whatsoever. I'm sort of far too heavy and fat, and I can outpace him probably. In Florian Andoni, we have a very, very fast centre forward who's actually finally coming good now, although he himself is injured. So it's a case of Murray just. He knows all the canny tricks. He is as fit as the likes of Teddy Sheringham used to be and Kevin Phillips used to be. So he's kind of one of those sort of elder statesmen who'll let everyone else do the running around for him, and he'll just sort of find his space and hopefully sort of bury the chances that might come his way.
And I guess, you know, a player that we spoke about last time a few months ago that didn't quite hit the ground running but scored a cracking goal in the FA Cup, Jurgen Locadia. Is it Locadia?
Yep.
So we got to pronounce your races right this time. But what have you made of him so far? Is he going to be playing, I suppose, on Saturday?
If Florian Andoni is fit, he'll be ahead of Locadia. I'll be astonished if Locadia starts. One would assume that Murray will, and Andoni would be on the bench, and Locadia might be on the bench. Yeah, he's an interesting beast. He's kind of more played as a wide forward rather than a number 10 or a leader. He can lead the line. He does have a little bit of pace about him. His decision making at the moment isn't as great as it could or should be. He's still learning, you know, getting used to this. It's taken a bit of time for some of the new signings to bed in. There is something about him, but you know, he's far from the finished product yet. There's more to come from him.
Okay, excellent stuff then. So it's a must not lose for both teams. You know, you say you want a home win, but let us know your score prediction for the weekend then, mate.
Oh, well, assuming that all the players turn up and treat the game properly like they should do, I would be, you know, and we're not going to concede. So I'll go for a 2-1 to the Albion.
All right. Well, there you go. I don't like the sound of that. I must not lose for Saints. I suppose we could say we're still unbeaten at the Amex over the last couple of seasons, but we're clutching a little bit. But great to speak to you again, Alan. Just remind anybody that I suppose is living in the West Sussex area where they can sort of catch up with you or your radio show.
Pick up this anywhere across the world. The Albion Roar is on Radio Reverb 97.2 FM in the city of Brighton Hove, but we're also we broadcast on TuneIn. That radio station broadcasts on that, or you can pick up the podcast on audioboom.com and look for the channel The Albion Roar, and all our archive shows are on that.
Excellent. Hopefully we do speak again next season as Premier League contestants.
Absolutely. Enjoy the day, but not too much.
Cheers, mate.
All the best.
Big thanks again then to Alan from the Brighton Hove podcast and radio show, The Albion Roar. And do make sure you check out their show for all of your Brighton needs. And maybe if you're listening along on Saturday morning around lunchtime, somebody may make a cameo. So be aware of that. Anyway, that does just about wrap up this week's big match build-up show. Saints are finally back in action. But can we continue the momentum from Tottenham? But I'm interested to know what you guys think. Let me know your predictions in the comments or on the usual social pages. Is this a must not lose? So thank you very much for sticking with us. And if you're heading along to the Amex, do let us know if you're going. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Only one thing left from me is come on, you Saints.